What would it actually take to convince you a person is guilty? A name on a tape? A photo? A gut feeling that won't sit still? Be honest about your threshold, because this week, thousands of people cleared theirs on almost nothing. A name surfaced in the background of that distress call. A real, living person got attached to it, and the verdict came before a single fact did. But strip away the captions and the certainty, and here's what's left. A short list of things that are actually confirmed, and a much longer list of things nobody with any authority has verified at all. Almost no one is showing you that second list. That's the part I'm about to hand you. The confirmed, the unconfirmed, and the line between them that everyone else is stepping right over. If you're new here, that's the whole job of this channel. Separating what's confirmed from what's just loud. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment this actually moves. Let me start with what is genuinely confirmed, because on its own it's substantial. The name on that call was Bart. It belongs to Bart Edmiston Jr. He's 21, a college athlete, the starting punter at the University of Wyoming, and by last fall, a nationally recognized one. Before Wyoming, he was a standout at Ocean Springs High School, the same program Nolan came up through. And here's the detail that gives this its weight. The two of them were teammates. They played together in 2022. There's a photo, posted years ago by the school's football page, of the pair of them side by side, talking to a group of younger kids. An ordinary, wholesome moment nobody thought twice about at the time, and one that now gets stared at through a completely different lens. Hold on to how ordinary that photo was the day it was taken. We come back to it. Here's what's also confirmed. Edmiston was on Horn Island on July 4th, but not on Nolan's boat. He was in a separate vessel, and according to Warren Hudson's own account, he pulled up during the same window that towing call was being placed, arriving to help the boat that was taking on water. That has to anchor everything else. By the account of someone who was actually there, the reason Edmiston appeared in that stretch of water was to assist a sinking boat, which means when a voice on that recording snaps his name in frustration, the plainest, most confirmed reading is a chaotic scene and someone yelling at the guy who just showed up to help. Now the audio itself, because the audio is what turned an investigative footnote into a firestorm, and the gap between what it contains and what people say it contains is enormous.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can you all please come? We have a membership. Shut up! Shut the fuck up!
Well, the new audio came out from that CTO dispatch. I want y'all ass in jail. From Bart to Wyatt to that damn mom who was that judge. Yeah, I knew something happened to Nolan Wells. Look, in that CTO dispatch call, before somebody picked up, can we cover it up? You killed him. Is he already dead? Nolan, wake up. Look, damn it, Bart. I think Bart ass did it. That's what I think. Look, wake the fuck up. They panicking. They need to be in jail by tonight.
Here's what's genuinely audible under careful listening. A caller telling a dispatcher the bilge pump has failed and the boat is going down, asking for help. The name Bart. A woman's voice reacting with something that sounds like alarm. That is the confirmed content. That's it. And here's what is not on that recording, no matter how many times you've seen it captioned otherwise. There's a version circulating with text laid across the top. Someone's interpretation typed over the audio, turning muffled background noise into a supposed confession. Lines about covering something up, about someone already being gone, about people belonging in jail by nightfall. I'm not going to read that overlay to you line by line, because repeating it is the entire trap. None of it has been confirmed by anyone with authority over the file, not the outlet that obtained the unedited version, not NBC, not TMZ, not a single forensic audio examiner working under real conditions with real equipment. It is one person's caption, handed to millions as if it were a transcript. Those are not the same thing, and the distance between them is where this whole panic lives. And understand why background audio like this is such treacherous evidence in the first place. This is a distress call, wind across a microphone, a boat filling with water, multiple people shouting over each other in a genuine emergency. That is close to the worst possible condition for making out anybody's exact words. which is precisely why the outlets and examiners who actually handle audio professionally have not signed off on any dramatic interpretation of it. When people who do this for a living stay silent, and people who caption TikToks feel certain, the certainty is the thing to distrust. So let me be precise, the way this case demands. Confirmed, the word Bart is on the tape. A startled reaction is on the tape. Edmiston arrived to help during that window, Hudson said so directly. Edmiston later sat down with police, handed over his driver's license and his boat registration, and had his GPS data pulled by investigators. None of that is in dispute. Not confirmed that Nolan was on either boat when that call went out, that the alarmed voice was reacting to something happening to Nolan rather than to a vessel actively sinking underneath them, that shouting Edmiston's name carried any meaning beyond frustration at a person who just pulled into the chaos. Not one of those readings has been verified by anyone in a position to verify it. Both of those lists are true at the same time, and an honest accounting refuses to let the second list quietly borrow the credibility of the first. But, and this is the part that actually matters, none of that skepticism makes Edmiston's presence unimportant. It makes it important for a completely different reason than the viral clip claims. Think about what a second boat actually means. During the window, investigators are focused on roughly 4 o'clock to the 4:31 departure of the primary boat. There were now, at minimum, 2 vessels in that water off the west tip of Horn Island. 2 boats means 2 onboard GPS systems, each one quietly logging its own position, minute by minute, with no memory to fail and no motive to lie. It means 2 separate groups of people whose accounts of that window can be checked against each other, and against both machine records at once. That is a genuinely bigger picture than the one the public has been working from. For weeks, this timeline rested on the movements of a single boat. Now there's a second track running right alongside it, and investigators already hold it. Edmiston's GPS was pulled, which means law enforcement has a time-stamped record of exactly where his boat sat during the same window they've been reconstructing for the first one. What those 2 datasets show when laid on top of each other is something none of us watching online can see, and it's something a grand jury, with the power to subpoena, can compel directly from the one person who was there. That's the real significance, not a caption over some audio. A second data trail, in the exact water, during the exact window, one that investigators can cross-reference against everything else, and the public simply cannot. And that cross-referencing is the whole game, because it's the one thing memory can't survive. A person can misremember a time. A person can shade an account, on purpose or not, but a GPS log doesn't. When you hold a witness's version of that window against the 2 boats' machine records, any gap between what someone said and where the data puts them stops being an opinion and becomes a fact. A discrepancy investigators can see in black and white. That's a tool no press conference and no viral thread has. It's not louder than the internet. It's just true in a way the internet can't be. And it reframes an older piece of this story. When someone on that towing call told the dispatcher that everyone aboard was accounted for and fine, Nolan was not on the primary boat. That much is confirmed. The presence of a second boat in the same water at the same time raises a question, and I want to frame this as exactly what it is. A question, not a claim. Was Nolan on the other boat at any point during that window? I don't know. Nobody watching this knows. But it is precisely the kind of question 2 sets of GPS data and every witness account are built to answer, and precisely the kind of question investigators are positioned to close while the rest of us guess. Now I have to take on the theory that's fused all of this together online, because it's moving fast, and it's built on a specific logical error this channel exists to catch. The claim runs like this. The independent autopsy was missing the structures of Nolan's neck. The state retained them before Dr. Mitchell ever received the body. Combine that, the theory says, with the shouted name on the audio, and you've got proof Nolan was strangled on one of those boats. Watch how much has to be simultaneously true for that chain to hold. It requires the background audio to contain what people insist it contains, which no forensic examiner has confirmed. It requires the withheld neck structures to actually show signs of strangulation, which Mitchell never concluded because he never got to examine them. And it requires Edmiston's presence to be tied to physical harm done to Nolan, which no investigation has publicly established. Each of those is a real, open question. Welded together and sold as a finished conclusion, they become something the evidence flatly does not support. Here's the distinction that keeps getting flattened, and it may be the most important sentence in this entire update. Mitchell said he could not rule out a neck injury as a cause of death. Specifically, and only because he never had the neck to examine. That is not the same as Mitchell saying he found strangulation. I couldn't rule it out, and I found evidence of it, are different statements. One is an absence, the other is a finding. Collapsing the first into the second is exactly how an open question gets laundered into a false certainty, and it is happening in real time with this case. What's actually true is narrower and still serious. The neck structures are in the possession of the state of Mississippi. Mitchell has formally asked to review them against the state's own findings. And Ben Crump has demanded that Mitchell be in the room when this reaches a grand jury, so that panel hears the independent pathologist alongside the state's examiner, rather than a single official account standing alone. Whether that request is granted may be one of the most consequential decisions left in this whole case. The investigative machinery isn't idle either, whatever the quiet on the public side suggests. Former Mississippi Judge Carlos Moore spent this week openly pushing for arrests, writing plainly that they need to happen now. That's his position. We walked through the reasoning behind it in the last update. What matters here is that the questions Edmiston's presence raises aren't floating in a vacuum. They sit inside an official record. What his GPS showed, what he told police when he sat down with them, what his boat registration says about the vessel he arrived in, and where it went once that call ended. Those answers exist somewhere. They just don't exist for us yet. And now I have to say the thing this channel will always stop to say, because it's the difference between reporting on a case and feeding one. Bart Edmiston has not been charged. He has not been named a suspect by any law enforcement agency. By the only first-hand account we have of why he was there, he showed up to help a boat that was going under, and everything confirmed about his conduct that day is consistent with a person doing exactly that. He's a 21-year-old whose name, until this week, was attached to a punting record and a high school photo with a friend. It's now being typed into the same sentence as the word murder by people who have never spoken to him, on the strength of a caption laid over a noisy recording. That should sit uncomfortably with all of us. Not because his presence isn't a legitimate threat, it plainly is, and investigators are right to examine it, but because there is a canyon between investigators are checking where his boat was and this man killed his former teammate, and only one of those two things is supported by anything confirmed. Filling that canyon with certainty nobody has earned doesn't get Nolan any closer to the truth. It just risks doing to a second family what's already being done to the first. So here's the honest ledger, tonight. Confirmed. A second boat was in that water during the critical window. It belonged to Bart Edmiston, Nolan's former teammate. He arrived, by the only account we have, to help. He cooperated with police, handed over identifying documents, and had his GPS pulled. His name is audible on the towing call. Open, and I mean genuinely open, what that GPS actually shows. What Edmiston told investigators. Whether Nolan was ever on the second boat at all. What the withheld neck structures would reveal. And whether that audio captures anything beyond a sinking boat and a chaotic afternoon. Not established by anyone with the authority to establish it. That a crime happened on any boat at all. No cause of death has been confirmed. No one has been charged. No one has been named a suspect. What changed this week is that the picture of that water got more crowded. A second vessel, a second data trail, a former teammate, and a more crowded picture is one investigators can do far more with than a thin one. That's real. It is also not a verdict, and I'm not going to dress it up as one. Nolan Wells was 18. A kid remembered for making the people around him feel looked after. Somewhere in an old photo on a school football page, he's standing next to another kid from the same town, both of them smiling at a camera, neither one knowing what that picture would be asked to carry 2 years later. One of them is gone, the other is answering questions from investigators. And the space between those two facts is exactly where the truth of this case still lives, unproven in either direction, waiting on the one thing that keeps refusing to arrive, a confirmed answer. When there's an arrest, a real one, named and sourced, you'll hear it here first, not a moment before. Subscribe so you're here when it comes. I'll talk to you soon.